Hey, what's up movers? Kellen from Movement Parallels Life here. Got another movement practice for us today. This one is all about flow. Now to me, flow is all about your ability to keep your body in motion. Use a variety of different movement patterns to keep your body moving creatively and dynamically. We'll start off with a quick mobility check-in. Just get your body loose, warmed up, ready to go. Then we're gonna break down the patterns. These are gonna be simple, accessible movements that you're already familiar with, but we're gonna break them down, we're gonna add new pieces, and then we're gonna start working on the transitions. We're gonna integrate some of these patterns together. Once we get our guided practice in, we get a little work on the integration, then it's gonna be time to bring the pieces together into a flow. You won't need any equipment for this one, just some open, comfortable floor space. Grab a towel, grab a water bottle, let's do it. If you like the practice, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with a friend. I know a lot of people out there are on quarantine, they're staying in, training from home. So if you know someone that could benefit and would love this type of movement practice, share the love. All right, that's enough of an intro. Let's get moving. So we're gonna kick things off today with a little bit of groundwork, a quick mobility check-in. We're gonna start off seated position, legs extended. We're going to spend just about a minute here. So you can start by posting your hands back behind your hips, keep your shoulders back, and just starting to add some gentle movements, rocking side to side, leaning forward, and just start to check out the different angles here. At this time, this is a great opportunity to get in touch with your breathing. And don't push yourself too far, too fast. Remember, we're just checking in with the body, getting prepped for a little bit of fun today. Transition into a side bend sit. This front leg is set up at about 90 degrees, back leg is wrapped back. See if you can sit up tall. Once again, hold your shoulders back. If you're having trouble stabilizing here, just use your hands in contact with the ground. Hold this position first. Once again, take a few deep breaths. Start to add some movement, hinging forward. Make sure to keep your spine straight and hinge at the hips. Switch sides. Make our next switch to a kneeling position. Wherever you're comfortable here, so this can be with flat feet or flexed feet. You can kneel tall, wherever you're comfortable, but just start adding some movement here, shifting weight from side to side, or adding some hip rotations. So for this hip rotation, I'm gonna roll right over the inside of my big toe, bring my knee down to the ground, open and closed. A little bit of internal and external hip rotation. See how that feels on one side, then shift. Compare it to the other side. From this kneeling position next, you can cross your ankles. Sit back, coming to cross sit. Rock from side to side. Reach forward. Switch your cross. Just a really nice hip stretch here. If you have chronically tight hips, take more time and spend more time in your cross-sit position. From there, transition to laying on your back. Tuck the knees, and you can just bring your hips from side to side, a gentle hip rotation. As you rotate, maybe you can start to extend your top leg. We can combine that with a rock up, so keep your spine rounded, core strong, and just generate a small rocking action. Build your momentum, rock up. Rock back, you can untuck, place your feet on the ground, walk your shoulder blades together, lift your hips up into a bridge. You're gonna take one arm, reach diagonally across your body, extend into the reach, switch sides. Rock up, come into a knee hand position, locked out arms, rotate the pits of the elbows forward, and create some good length from the crown of your head down to your tailbone. Now from there, just starting to rock, shift your weight, forward, backward, side to side. And as you do that, really press into the ground through your fingertips. They're just mobilizing the wrists here. Maybe start to add some movements here, rounding and extending your spine. Stabilize yourself. And we'll go into some reaches here. So focus on taking your arm and your shoulder through a full range of motion. So you've got these different movements, all these different angles, and then also movement at the shoulder, rotating internal and external. Switch sides. All right, that's our quick mobility check-in. Hopefully feeling good in your body. We're ready to move on to our pattern practice. All right, so now we're gonna start looking at the movements that we're using in today's flow. Again, these are gonna be simple movements. You'll probably be familiar with them if you've been through some of my videos before, but let's break them down and let's look at the opportunities to change the movements, expand them, and make them work for you. So we're gonna start off with the foot hand crawl first. So just as a baseline, you're balancing on your hands and feet, and then as you move, you're stepping with your opposite hand and foot. And when that starts out, it's really challenging. It's probably the first thing you'll notice. But then it starts out just a little bit more mechanical. It takes some thought, so the movements are a little rigid. And what we want to do in this flow practice is get more comfortable and slowly start to make it more fluid, more natural. So here we go. Let's break it down, starting with, we're back in our knee hand crawl position. And setting this position strong, creating some tension in the body, tucking the toes, and lifting the knees to hold the foot hand crawl. And just be able to hold this with soft strength. By that I mean you should still be able to breathe, kind of move around softly, but maintain your stability. And then from there, just starting to shift your weight from side to side. And then from that weight shift, can you pick up a hand, real soft, and then replace it strong? Shift, pick up a hand, replace it. Do 4 more of these. Switch, 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 last one, hands down. And anytime you need a break, we're gonna slow things down through these movements. They're deceivingly tough. So if you need a little break, just bring your knees down, catch your breath, and you can perform any of these little hand and wrist movements. And then we'll get back in second set of drills. So now we've got the position, we've created a little bit of movement. Now can you pick up the hand and the opposite foot? Hold your balance there. Switch. Softly pick up opposite hand and foot. Switch. We'll do about 10 of these. 5 more. Last one, plant the hands and foot, and you can either take a quick rest by dropping your knees or lifting your hips. Really try to focus on calming your breathing, staying relaxed, staying focused, and finding different expressions of this position where you can rest. Maybe it's back here, here, or knees down. All of it works, okay? From that opposite hand foot balance next, I want you to reach, touch down. So you're going to reposition your hand and foot, touch, touch. So now you can start taking advantage of moving on your 2 points of support, your hand and opposite foot. Reach, and set your hand and foot down in different places. Stay here for about 10 more seconds. Quick rest. And switch. Opposite hand foot balance. Step and reposition. So basically what I want you to do here is start checking out these different angles, not just moving forward and back, but getting used to moving diagonally, crossing your midline, and hitting the different angles. The challenge is maintaining stability as you move, okay? And quick rest, knees down. To roll your shoulders or work out your wrists. Now we'll start opening up the movement a little bit. You've built the stability. Now back in the foot hand crawl position. Start picking up your opposite hand and foot and rotating. So you've got a small space, and I just want you to be able to crawl around that small space. That's going to force you to change your orientation frequently. Try crawling forward, backward, forward. One more time, back. Crawl to the middle and rotate. This whole time you're focusing on keeping your hips and head at the same level, and you're always actively pressing into the ground. So that's the baseline for our foot hand crawl. Let's go on to the second pattern. Got the side bend sit. So just like we set this up earlier, now we're going to be focusing on a dynamic movement, switching from hip to hip. So your back leg is going to swing forward and back. Let's work that a few times. Start to feel the momentum that you can generate from the swing of the leg. Last one, bring it out, switch your legs, switch sides. Now let's bring those two together. Swing the leg forward, switch, wrap it back. You can start to build a little bit more momentum here by using your hands to push and spin. So start to get that rhythm. We want you to be able to not only switch from hip to hip, but also start to spin and change which direction you're facing. Last one. And then our second way to switch here, real simple, just keeping your feet on the ground, picking your knees up, swiveling from side to side. See if you can combine those two. Switch and swivel. Awesome. Third pattern from this side bend sit. Bring the knees up, post the hands back behind the hips, press in to lift your butt off the ground. And we've got the inverted crawl. So again, we've got our 4 points of support, and just see if you can start shifting your weight. We'll start with a little slide here. So I'm going to slide my hips back, pull forward from the heels, slide my hips forward, and then use this to start to create a little bit of locomotion. Sliding forward, sliding back. And then again, throwing in that orientation change, a little spin. Rocking my weight back onto my hips, using my hands to spin. So now we've got a way to move using this inverted crawl in a very small space. If you're feeling good there, you want to expand it. Start to lift your hips off the ground. We've got our opposite hand-foot balance again. Check in on both sides. And then see if you can turn that into a crawl forward and backward. Anytime you want to change your direction, sit and spin back into your crawl, or combine your crawl with your slides. So we keep this stuff pretty easy so you have plenty of options for fluid controlled movement. Fourth and final pattern that we'll go through, we've got some kind of rolling pattern. So we've got two options today, the lateral roll or the back roll. We'll start with the lateral roll. If we begin in a knee hand position, being able to shift your weight to one side, sit to your hip, roll right across, back to your knee hand position. Lots of support here, very easy roll. Can also lower down into a tuck position, shift weight, roll across the back rather than the hips. Drop your elbows, turn yourself into this egg shape, roll right across your back. Drop, tuck, roll across. Our back roll would be the next variation. So if you're feeling good with that lateral roll, got a lot of mobility, you want to try to go inverted. We'll take the rock up we did earlier. Reach back overhead. You got to use a lot of momentum here. And if I'm going to roll over my right shoulder, I'm going to look down at it, extend my right arm, kick back, roll all the way through. Drop down. These rolls take practice. I want you to find the variation that works best for you today, that's going to work in your flow. But even if you've got a little challenge going through that back roll, keep practicing, because in time you'll master that and be able to pull that into your flow as well. All right, those are our base patterns that we're going to work with today. Now let's move into integration, blending some of these movements to start our flow.
All right, the next part of our practice is all about integration. We're taking these movement patterns that we've built and we're blending them together, focusing on the transition from movement to movement. In this first segment, we'll focus on the transition between foot-hand crawling and the side bent sit. To start off, I'm demonstrating a very simple transition, starting in a strong foot-hand crawl position. I'm going to lift one hand and then slide my opposite knee towards where the hand was. And as I slide my knee forward, I'm just going to sit to my hip, and that will take me right into side bent sit. From side bent sit, switch your hips a few times, and then plant one hand, press into the ground, and slide your front leg back, returning to the foot-hand crawl position. Work with this transition and explore other transitions. Just keep your focus on smoothness and control. Next, we'll focus on integrating the side bent sit and inverted crawl. This one's pretty straightforward. From side bent sit, post your hands back behind your hips, lift your knees, and press into the ground. That's going to bring you right to your inverted crawl. Get in the rhythm of the side bent sit hip switches, and then time it so you can transition right into your inverted crawl. To keep the fluidity and avoid any interruption in the movement, I'll tend to go from the side bent sit to the inverted crawl slide. Take the next minute to continue your practice, focusing on refining both the side bent sit switches and the inverted crawl, and smoothing out the transition between the two patterns. Take a moment to pause, set back up in your inverted crawl, and in our next segment, we're linking the inverted crawl and rolling variations. While in your inverted crawl, lower your hips to the ground. From there, you'll either round your spine, rock back, and kick overhead to take you into the back roll, or roll to your side for the lateral hip roll. Exiting your roll can be a little disorienting, but don't let that break your flow. As you're working your inverted crawl, start to think a few steps ahead. Know that you've got a roll coming up and know what you're going to do immediately after you complete that roll. No need to rush. Take the next minute to continue exploring these patterns and figuring out how you can link them together. Pause for a moment and we'll begin working one more integration, the transition from the roll back into the foot hand crawl. Once again, we've got a fairly intuitive transition here, but it'll still take some practice to smooth things out. Whether you're working the lateral roll or the back roll, the key here is to press yourself up from the ground as you exit and transition right back into the contralateral steps of the foot hand crawl. With this particular integration, you've got a lot of mobility and a lot of angles to explore. Challenge yourself to go beyond linear movement, go beyond just the baseline crawl, be able to integrate rotation, changes of orientation so you can hit all those angles and explore all planes of motion. And if at any point you find that you're getting stuck in your own head, try to lighten things up, make it more playful, and use your imagination to give this some context. Imagine that you're being chased or that you're crawling around and rolling under different obstacles. Now, I know that might sound silly at first, but play is really the pathway to this state of flow that we're looking for. Continue working your crawling and rolling for 30 more seconds, and then we'll move on with our practice. So we've broken down and practiced the movements. We've focused in on the transitions between the movements. Now we've got one final layer in our flow practice today. For today's flow, we'll bring all the movements together, switching from movement to movement every 20 seconds. We'll cycle through 2 consecutive times. Starting off in our first of 3 rounds, begin foot hand crawl for 20 seconds. Transition to side bend sit. Transition to inverted crawling. Transition to rolling. Make your transition back to foot hand crawling and we'll cycle through again. Transition to side bend sit. Transition to inverted crawling. Transition into your rolling patterns. That's time. Now take a short rest. All right, so you've got 30 seconds to rest here. Go through some ground movements, stretch, grab some water, and then we're going to jump back in, going through that same flow, 2 consecutive rounds, switching patterns every 20 seconds. We're going to go through 2 more rounds. All right, here we go. Coming back, round 2. I'll cue you through the switches. Start it off, foot hand crawling, 20 seconds. Transition to side bend sit. Switch to inverted crawling. Transition into your rolling variations. And bring it back for another cycle right into your foot hand crawling. Switch to side bend sit. Switch to inverted crawling. Transition to rolling. And that's time. Take your rest. All right, we'll take one more 30-second rest break before we get into the third and final round. If in round 2 you felt your flow start to smooth out, you felt things start to click, then in round 3 you can start to add a little bit more improvisation. Push your creativity and keep challenging yourself to blend and integrate your patterns. Get set for round 3, and here we go. Foot hand crawl. Transition to side bend sit. Transition to inverted crawling. Transition to rolling. Second cycle, transition to foot hand crawl. Side bend sit. Inverted crawling. And last 20 seconds here, rolling variations. And that's time. Let's take the last few minutes of today's practice to stretch out. We'll flow through a variety of different stretches, holding each for about 30 seconds to a minute. Focus in on deep, relaxed breathing. Draw your legs in and transition into a cross-sit stretch. Come forward onto your hands and knees and into a shoulder flexion stretch. Shift your weight forward and come into a spinal extension stretch. Ground your hands and feet and rise up to a high hip foot hand crawl stretch. Lower your knees to the ground, step one leg forward, transitioning into an extended half kneeling stretch. Switch sides on your half kneeling stretch. Shift your weight back and come into a straight leg split stretch. Switch sides on your split stretch. And we'll finish today's practice with some squat lateral shifting. All right, y'all, that's going to do it for today's practice. Now, I know it continues to be a weird time in the world, but I hope your movement practice is something that keeps you grounded and gives you peace of mind while taking care of your body so you can stay healthy. Big thanks for showing up and moving with me. I really appreciate you. And once again, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to Movement Parallels Life, and share this video with a friend who you know could benefit from getting some more movement goodness in their life. That's it for now, my free movers, but I'll be back soon with another practice. In the meantime, stay healthy, stay connected, and keep on moving.